Working with clients that want to hold product for a long time, we get really smart about how we're designing those homes to make sure if there is a problem, because problems do come up, that we're designing the house in a way that we can avoid them.
G'day guys, welcome to the MTDC Lounge. This is a podcast that breaks down everything you need to know about designing and building your ultimate home and what to expect. Whether you're a DIY renovator, a budding developer, or everything in between, we'll dive into the building journey, touching on what to expect, what's next, and how to go about it. We'll hear from a heap of experienced consultants and trades about all aspects. So let's get stuck in. Welcome to the lounge. G'day guys, and welcome to another episode of the MTDC Lounge. You've got your host here, Matt, and tonight we've got Karl Hellyar from Hellyar Design. How are you, mate?
Good. Very good. Thanks for having us down. I really appreciate it.
Mate, you are absolutely welcome. You've been one of the guys that I've been super keen to have you on board, but you've been a super busy bloke, so tonight's the night.
Nah, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I see you around town all the time, but I don't actually get an opportunity to sit down and have a long conversation. So it's good to sit down and catch up.
Well, mate, we're all in that. We're in the same groups, so we're always the two ships passing. But I've come and seen you talk at some of the developers meetings. You're quite a presence, I guess, in the development space in Newcastle, which has been absolutely amazing to watch. So let's start off the night. Let's tell the guys who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I guess I'm Karl from Hellyar Design Construct. So we're a builder developer here in Newcastle, just work locally. Taking on between sort of 15 to 20 projects a year, both our own sites and client sites as well. We really focus on that dual lock space. That's where we find we add the most value to our clients. And yeah.
The dual lock space is such a huge thing at the moment, given the circumstances around generational living, trying to make a little bit of money out of the block that you've got, the equity, all those kind of things that we've spoken on many of episodes before. Let's have a chat about how you go about finding the blocks and how you actually develop these things. What are the things that you look for? Yeah,
I think it's tough in Newcastle to find good dual lock sites. A lot of people actually get caught out. They'll look at the basic stuff. So they'll look at their floor space ratio. They'll look at their zoning. The big ones we check for is things like mine subsidence. So that for us is the biggest red flag that'll rule the site out. And then we start checking all our services. So we'll look at our power lines, our sewer, our water, those sort of items to make sure the site's viable. We sort of focus finding sites suburb by suburb. So we'll start to look at mapping, find pockets that we know that work. So if we're looking at, say, Lambton or New Lambton, where we do a lot of work, before even an agent or a buyer's agent or whoever it is send us a site, we'll naturally know the characteristics of it because we know where the mines run. We know that if there's flooding in those zones, and it just really speeds up that process for us of site acquisition. Yeah.
Lambton and New Lambton is an incredibly dicey suburb, particularly with the heritage requirements and the mine subsidence and all the bits and pieces. So it's really interesting to hear that you kind of nailed down that New Lambton space. How do you find out, or what are your first couple of steps that you find says this is the block we want?
This is the site.
Yeah.
There's always the cost of it.
Yeah, of course.
That's definitely a big one.
Yeah.
But I think we just read the planning certificate. So, get a copy of that, read what the requirements are, what the restrictions are, like is there heritage, is there any overlays we need to deal with? And as well, just look at the shape of the site. Like, we're dealing with an awkward shape. Have we got a corner block? Is it got a good 15 metre frontage or 12 metres if it's got a laneway? Yep. They're the natural characteristics that'll make a dual lock stack up and work.
What's a good number in terms of cost people should look at for a good price block for dual lock?
To buy one? I think the rule I work off is 3 times value. So if we're buying it for $1 million, you need to exit for $3 million. Okay. It's not an exact science, but it's a rough rule of thumb. So if you're buying in a suburb at $1 million and I'm building a dual lock, can I sell both sides at $1.5 million? Yes, there's history to show I can. That project should generally work.
New Lambton would be perfect for that.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's a good spot. It's not quite blue chip, but it's definitely outside those Merriweather and city centre spaces. Do you find that the Newcastle contribution fees and things like that are a big factor in building these sites as well?
Yeah, I do. Like I find Newcastle contributions are pretty good. They're pretty consistent. We get generally hit with $20,000 on every site, so it's easy to work that in. The Hunter water fees, they're really good in Newcastle. Like if we start looking at Lake Macquarie's and other areas, they start to creep up a little bit. And then same as housing productivity fee. So I think they're all really consistent now for housing productivity. We know what that is, but they come on pretty strong in the last few years, and that caught a lot of buyers out. They weren't aware of the feasibilities that they had to be factored in, and it definitely changes what you can pay for the site, because basically it comes straight out of your bottom line.
Easy 20 grand straight away, and you know, if you haven't thought about it, it's definitely going to be taking it out of your margin. It's going to be the difference for sure.
Yeah, and I think it just caught everyone by surprise. Like I think if you're in the right circles, you knew about it. Because if you were going to networking nights and you're going to UDA events and things like that, it was definitely spoken about, but your smaller mum and dad's developers just weren't across that. And even now, to be honest, like we often talk to clients and we don't do their feasibility for them, but they'll talk to us about a few points and costs to watch out for, and they might have the council contributions, but rarely do they have Hunter water or housing productivity built in.
What can you kind of expect for a dual lock build?
Design,
cost.
Sorry. Yeah, look, we're pricing anywhere from sort of $3,300 to $3,500 a meter squared at the moment.
Yep.
But that's for like a really good quality luxury dual lock. In a blue chip suburb knockdown rebuild, that can be trimmed down if you're looking at suburbs that are a little bit further out and you want to drop the specs a bit. I think the big thing with costings, because it can go open end both ways, but I have a bit of a saying is you don't put a project home in Merriweather and you don't put a Merriweather home in the projects. And that's just, knowing your market. So making sure when you spec that product, you spec it right for the market you're in, and that changes the price hugely.
In my opinion, a $3,000 to $3,500 a square meter is a fantastic number, particularly for a dual lock build. And I mean, if you're shooting for $1.5 million sell in New Lambton, you're gonna find it. You're 100% gonna get it. What would you recommend? I guess the mums and dads at home who are thinking about getting the dual lock. What are the first things that they should be considering before they either go and buy a new block or consider using their own?
Oh, I think definitely before they look at getting a site or using their own, like talk to a designer, but talk to a builder as well. We have so many sites that come to us. After they've been DA approved, we go through and price them up, and they're nowhere near that, $3,000 to $3,500 a meter squared. They're more like $4,000 to $4,500.
Absolutely.
And it's purely on the basis of they just haven't quite been thought out and designed right. And I think if you, or maybe they're a steep site and they've got big constraints and they're just not factored into the costing side of it. So many clients will go through, spend a heap of money. They don't actually deliver the product. They don't build it because the cost surprises them. If they speak to their designer and their builder early on in the piece, there's full transparency through the whole process, and they know where it's going to land.
So you've got a specific process for yourself. So you work mainly with clients, but also do a lot of your own work. So you have a team pretty much set up around yourself. What are your steps to go through that design process and I guess the cost analysis?
Look, the first thing we do is look at a site, and we find that we sometimes actually get a better result by not overdoing the yield. So if we've got a 600 meter squared site, by code, you can go Torrance Tidal down to 200 meters squared. So technically maybe you get 3 on there. We find often you'll actually get a much better outcome if you do 2 on there. It'll reduce your building costs because you've got a bit more space, so you can work the product a bit better. And sometimes it'll actually up your end value as well. So they're the sort of scenarios we go through with our clients, is to look at what the best outcome is. And then we'll go through and we'll start doing some yield diagrams. So we'll look at it where we're doing an attached duplex or a detached duplex. So that's another one we're big on. You may have seen we deliver a lot of detached duplexes. They are more expensive to build, but you can pick up an extra 100 or 150 grand in some instances on your resale price as well. So I guess it's going through all those scenarios and just finding out what's best for the particular site.
So for the players at home, what's the difference between an attached and a detached duplex?
So an attached has got a common wall down the middle, so more of your traditional townhouse, I suppose. And a detached duplex goes through the same planning code, but it's 2 separate dwellings completely.
And it's just divided by the imaginary boundary line.
That's exactly right. So we've got one we did recently, double street frontages, one dwelling onto each side. We've had a few people tell us that they didn't even know we did another dwelling down the bottom when we went to sell it. So completely different homes, different stigma, different appearance. So
what are the design guidelines that you follow if you're going to build in, say, Merriweather or New Lambton? Like we mentioned that you don't build a spec home in Merriweather. How do you know what will sell the best in those areas?
Yeah. We create luxury when we work in the nicer suburbs through a few points. So we try not to overcapitalize and overspend. The facades will look nice, like whether we're using a white brick or a recycled brick, it'll be an expensive product on the facade and some really nice cladding. Behind the facade, we try and keep it really simple. So we'll do wall on wall. No one ever buys the home for the way the side of the house looks. So keep your cost down in those areas. And then we'll go through the build. Like if we're in Merriweather, basically all our builds, to be honest, just little things that don't cost a heap of money, but you'll find people do high ceilings. So I do a 2.7 high ceiling, feels really good. And then they'll do it with a 2.1 high door. So, we'll go through the house and we'll do 2.4 doorways the whole way through. And it's all those little touch points that just make the house feel more luxurious without breaking the bank and, spending it on natural stones and really expensive products.
So where can clients really kind of spend that money? Where does it snowball?
I think you can just start to lose huge money in your kitchen areas. So we work with some great kitchen companies. We give them a budget. They come up with awesome designs without overspending it. But I think if you go to the wrong kitchen company and say, give me a kitchen for a Merriweather product, you can end up with $150,000 on your kitchen. Whereas you can spend $50,000 or $60,000 and use your features right to have a great outcome.
Yeah, and it's like a kitchen is a very, very central feature to the house, and I mean you could easily drop $150,000 on it, and I mean you see it countless times where people want the brass or the gold fittings and things like that, and it's just like, well, wait a minute, these are going to be starting to go up, and it goes from a square meter rate of 3,000 to 3,500 to 4,600, over 5.
Yeah, and I think you can get really good products with great warranty. So, product we use all the time is Reese and their Mizu Drift range. It looks great, looks fantastic. They've got, full warranties on it. You never have a problem with it. And it can be 1/5 the price of some bougie name from overseas somewhere. And that's where, I had someone talk to me one time about they spent, it was $60,000 on door handles in a house in, albeit in Sydney, on the harbour, beautiful home. But it's like, how do you justify $60,000 on door handles?
Yeah. They have fingerprints on them.
Yeah. Well, they did. And they were beautiful. They looked really nice. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, they were just a door handle. Yeah. Whereas, we find we won't use the base range of door handles. We'll spec it up. We might spend an extra $40 or $50 a door handle. The big thing for me is they need to feel nice. You need to grab them. They need to feel strong. And that brings a lot of emotion to someone when they're walking through, and that's where they'll pay a bit more money for a home. But you don't have to overcapitalize and overspend. Stick with brand names that are reliable, that people know. You don't have to get them really, really fancy ones.
I find longevity is a huge thing as well. Like, I mean, you want to design for something that's going to be timeless. But in saying that, you don't want to have something that's going to be standard everywhere. You want to have a little bit of flavor. For me personally, I went with gunmetal grey, brushed gunmetal grey for a lot of my fittings, and I thought, this looks great. This is fantastic. Until the kids get a hold of the shower handle, and then all of a sudden, they're swinging off the side of it, and then it's all scratched. So what I really loved about my gunmetal grey is now all scratched, and you see all the silver underneath the coating, which is unfortunate. But so how do you recommend a client find their builder?
Look, I think obviously do some research. Do some research on their social media as well. Like, make sure they are out there actively. Talk to a few builders. Go and visit their build sites. What do their build sites look like? If you turn up to a builder's build site and it looks like an absolute mess, there's probably a good sign that they're not organised. So, and I think the other one is rely on word of mouth. Like, Newcastle is a really small industry. So the good thing about that is you've got a good reputation. It goes a long way. If you've got a bad reputation, it goes a long way. So just speak to people. Yeah.
Transparency is a massive, massive thing in our industry, and that's the whole purpose of the podcast. It's the whole purpose of what we do. We were only talking a little bit off a minute ago. What is, in your opinion, the most important part of the transparency of a builder, and what should a client expect from their builder?
Yeah, I think it's just getting the clients involved. So, you don't have to hide anything from them. If there's a problem on site, it's much better to take that to the client, talk them through it. Problems happen. In any industry, you're always going to come across challenges. If the client knows about it and they know that you're proactively working through it and you're going to get a good outcome, they're going to be fine with it. If you hide that problem and it comes out 3 years, 5 years down the track, they're going to come back to you. It's always going to come out that you just didn't do it properly and didn't resolve it. And that's how you get a bad reputation.
And then you have to come back and fix it. It's going to cost everybody. It's going to cost the builder money.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of heartache.
Yeah.
We're seeing it time and time again. It's just countless times at the moment. The industry is having a really hard time with finding these trades that are going to look after the clients, and unfortunately, it's becoming all the good ones are getting painted with the same brush, and it's really sad.
I think it goes the whole way through the industry as well. I mean, it's builders and clients talking and being open and going through those challenges, but it's also with your trades. So like our trade base, they don't hide things from us because they know if they make a mistake and say they cut out something they shouldn't have cut out and we've got to get another trade back in to do it, we all work together as a team. So they sort of know if they don't bring it to our attention, we're going to find it anyway. We're going to have to go through it with them. So let's just cut to the chase, bring it to our attention. We'll talk to our client if we need to, and then we'll go through it from there and just resolve it.
It's a big issue, and a lot of people don't understand. Like a lot of clients or a lot of people at home don't understand that the builders have to organize everybody. They have to bring in their trades on specific dates, and if they don't make it, then things get pushed back. And then it's not just that portion that gets pushed back; it's a whole domino effect.
Snowballs.
It gets huge, and unfortunately, like a lot of clients don't quite understand, the intensity that a lot of builders have to deal with. And I mean, if they go through the owner-builder route, which is definitely an option for a lot of people, they don't understand that a lot of trades who are open to doing the owner-builder routes, they don't have that effort. They don't have that relationship with a builder.
Yeah.
And I mean, you build 15 to 20 duplexes in Newcastle. Yeah. And everybody who works with you knows that your trades understand what you're doing. This is your niche. This is what you do. And
it's building relationship with those trades as well. So like all of our trades are, pretty much close friends of ours too. So they weren't originally, and there's, I actually don't do business with friends because sometimes you need to talk to them, and you can lose friends through that. Everyone's seen that happen. But all of our trades on a business level, we get along with them really well. And the trades that don't fit our culture as a company, they don't work with us anymore. We replace them with someone else. So a big part of that is, the trades for us is trades communicating. So if we call them and they're reliable, or if they can't make it on time, they just don't tell us they can't make it on time. But as well as their quality of work. They don't have to be the best trade in the whole of Australia, but if they don't know how to do something, they just need to go through it with us and we'll work with them on it.
And particularly with the architectural details, you want to have that team, your designers, your engineers, all your bits and pieces to make sure that the end result is going to be, one, cost effective, two, look really great, and even three, just be exactly what you're after. And I mean, if the plans or the construction certificates aren't followed appropriately, then it all goes belly up, and then things go fully awry, and then building information certificates kind of get called on.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I think that's the worst case scenario ever is a building information certificate. And I don't think there's a lot of excuse in the industry to have them either, to be completely honest, because there's not that many critical inspections and documents that we need to provide for a build to make sure that doesn't happen. And there's enough checkpoints and stop points to make sure, like we were sort of speaking before, like you don't pour a slab without your slab inspection result coming back. So if if your certifier comes out on a Monday afternoon, does an inspection, and you don't get the report back in time, don't book that for Tuesday morning pour, book it for the next day, just so you have time to resolve that. So I think, I hear a lot of builders doing building information certificates for me. And for us, like our system's really tight. So we've got a schedule, and every single one of the certificates we need from a CDC or a CC certificate is on there. And we know that that's a stopgap, that we don't move forwards with plastering until our frame passed. And it just removes that risk from having to go down that road, because it's really hard for clients, because a building information certificate, is it 7 years it lasts for or something like that?
Yeah. It just says council are aware of it not being correct. And they'll come back. They could come back in 7 years.
And then, trouble is if they go to on-sell that house in 7 years and, they haven't renewed and haven't extended it, and then it comes up in their, solicitors' documents, it's a really bad position to be in.
And it's almost something that I ask every client I go on site with. It's so common that they go, hey, there's this sunroom that's kind of just rocked up and it's not really approved. Is there a way to get through it? And it's like, well, no, there's not.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, do you have a title insurance when you've purchased the block? Yes, then there are ways to work with it. Otherwise, no, you're going to be up for some coin, and it just sucks.
I guess that's the thing as well. You can't retrospectively inspect a waterproofing inspection or something like that. So it's you can't go back on those items once they're tiled and they're done. So you've got to do them in the right sequence and do it through. And for owner occupiers out there doing renovations, I know sometimes it seems a bit cheaper and easier to just not get the approvals and go and do it quickly, but generally it does come back to bite them, I find.
It's so important, and there are certain dangers in the industry that if we don't talk about it, it's not front of center. And one of the biggest red flags for me, I think, and it's becoming more prevalent in the industry, is that builders are saying that you don't need occupation certificate anymore. But there are some people out there that are saying, oh, don't worry about it, you're all right, we'll get you through, don't worry about OC, you'll still be able to live in it.
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind that some people think that this is okay.
It's crazy, isn't it? And it's one of those cases where it's all fine till it's not. Like you're living in a house without an OC, an accident happens, the house burns down, the insurance company comes in, where's your OC? And you're like, oh, I never had it. And you're like, well, we're not going to cover this situation. So that's the big risk to the industry, isn't it? It's like people acting off, I guess, probably incorrect or informed, uninformed advice, and then making big decisions and putting himself at this risk that's hugely unknown to him.
Yeah, 100% it is. And I think one of the things that I think would help the industry more, and you're fully welcome to disagree with me, but I think if the client is given the approval or the certification of each of your critical stage inspections, i.e. waterproofing, framing, etc., if they're given those documents once they've been approved, then the client themselves are going to know that's okay, and you can play on. There are multiple accounts where the builders will withhold those reports because they might feel like they're not going to get paid or whatever the situation might be. Yeah. But at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, if everyone's doing the right thing and if everyone's being fair to each other, these reports should be, in my opinion, provided when it's been done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there should be any reason they should ever be held back. And it, as we were sort of speaking off air before, it actually shows quality and trust to me. Like if you've got a frame inspection goes through and certifier picks something and you rectify it and you give the certificate to the client showing, hey, we had this frame inspection, there was XYZ that we had to rectify, here's what we did, re-inspection, now fully improved. It actually shows the client that when a situation comes up, you're doing the right thing. So I think a lot of builders might maybe look at that in the wrong way and see that inspection result that they need to rectify something shows them that they're not a good builder. But I don't think it is that. I think it's about the way that they respond to situations that shows that they're a good builder.
Well, absolutely. And there sometimes it's just an unfortunate location of a stud or something like that, or one of the plumbing boys come through and chopped out a stud, and then you just have to replace it. But there've been instances where like termite mesh, or even the screen, like shower screens, like some of the things that you need for a CC documentation, or sorry, the OC documentation, you don't even think about. Like, you don't understand. Some people don't understand that you need to have a glazing certificate, you need to have a BASIC certificate, you need to have slab inspection and termite inspection and all the bits and pieces. And if they don't have one of those reports, and there's a plethora of them, they can't get OC, and everything gets stopped until those documents are being received.
Yeah, and I've actually seen that a lot in the past as well, that huge delays at the end of the build because I've seen it with staff members before, and I've seen it with other builders that not proactively chasing those certificates through the build. You can't get your OC without all the mandatory certificates. They're all set out in your original approval, so you know what they are.
Yep.
So if you wait until the end of the build to chase your glazing certificate, maybe it's hard for that company to get it to you. It's going to be slow, but your windows go in at the start of the build. You've got a long time to get your glazing certificate from your window supplier.
And the waterproofing certificate, that's a huge one. The waterproof and one of the, in my opinion, the waterproofing situation is such a massive part of the construction documentation that if it fails, or if it's not done right, or if you don't have the certification, the whole job's shot. And if those waterproofing spaces, like the bathrooms, the laundries, and all the bits and pieces, if they don't have a certificate done, they're all coming out because there is no way you're getting that certified.
It's also one of the most costly to rectify as well. So, for me, peace of mind, like we don't tile till we've got our waterproofing certificate. We check it ourselves, but we want to make sure that the waterproof is also confident that he's done the right thing and it's perfect. Because even if we get through and say that the certificate's there and we get an OC, but in 5 years' time we've got to come back because there's waterproofing issues in the home, it's a very expensive exercise to rectify. So it's one that we really go above and beyond, because we'll double coats, we'll do extras, because you never want to come back for waterproofing. But I think that comes into with that smart design as well. So we try and avoid things like balconies over living areas and things like that. Like we do a lot of balconies, but we try and not have them over the buildings, because as much as everyone follows the code and you double coat and you waterproof perfectly, if there's ever a failure, that's typically where it will be. So I think that's working with clients that want to hold product for a long time, we get really smart about how we're designing those homes to make sure if there is a problem, because problems do come up, that we're designing the house in a way that we can avoid them.
So that touches on another question I wanted to know. Do you find that the two-story duplexes and things like that are the better sellers, or would you find you'd get a better yield out of the single stories?
I find if you're working in the inner city suburbs, you just don't have enough space to do single story. So I'll pick, whether it's a house or a duplex, a single story every day of the week. As an investor, as an owner occupier, everything. I just built my own house recently. It's a single story house. I prefer to live in a single story house. But when you're sort of restricted with size of a building, then a size of land, and you want to get a good size building, that's when you go to your double story. But it's a much longer build process. It's much more expensive. It's also much harder to get approved through council with shadow diagrams. I think the big one for me, and particularly looking at dual locks, like your dual lock and your market there for townhouses is largely downsizers and young and professional families. So if you're going 2-story, it's non-negotiable that you need a bedroom on the ground floor, because that will cut out a huge portion of your market if you don't have that there. The way we do that a lot is not everyone wants a 4-bedroom home with a townhouse, so we'll often do a media room on the ground floor, and we'll do a powder room, full bathroom, shower set up next to it, and that can become the master suite on the ground floor.
And that's a great way to do it. Now, we talk about it so much on the podcast, but what do you put on as a value per square meter at going up a second level?
Going up a second level, it's probably about, for me, like $700-800 a meter squared at a minimum. That obviously depends hugely on design as well. Like it's little things. I mean, scaffolding is a huge cost, and you've got double the cladding, but structural steel, like you're not going to have structural steel in most single story homes. And when you get into that for a double story home, there's the cost of the steel itself. There's the extra labor with a carpenter to put it in, but it can create significant delays in your build program too. So that's where the costs start to stack up a little bit.
Because you have to wait for the delivery of these steel members, and these steel members are massive and they're super heavy. Do you find that the voids and the stairwells in these double stories, they are a good design feature? Do you think they're still here? Do you think they're here to stay? Do you think these void systems and lifts are becoming the standard, the stock standard for two-story living?
I think for me, voids are here to stay. Voids, particularly in smaller products, we're often working with tight setbacks and not a heap of natural light. The voids can give them awesome appearance as you come into your dwelling, let a heap of natural light in. They take an area that, we work from 2.7 ceilings. All of a sudden, you've got basically a 5-meter ceiling over this void, so they look spectacular. I think with the lifts, mixed feedback on the lifts. We don't do lifts, but we do provisions for lifts at time. I think lifts are one of those items that can be fairly expensive, and not everyone's going to pay the value for it. So again, for me, that goes with the bedroom on the ground floor that can be a media room as well. Some people with kids would much prefer that to be a media room. If you've got a younger professional or younger family, they're not going to want to pay the extra premium to have a lift in their house because they won't use it. Whereas if you allow for a provision for it, so a space with a cupboard downstairs, cupboard upstairs, and that elderly person buys it with an easy conversion, that they'll do that themselves and add that value. Yeah.
The lift option is starting to get incredibly cheap, and it's becoming a very viable option for the older generation. We've got an aging population. I think developing these, because Queensland does it at the moment. They've got the assisted housing rules up in Queensland that. At the moment, thank Christ, at the moment, we don't have that accessibility design. It is kind of making its way into that Newcastle design, but I mean, we have to start considering it, and it's one of those things that will make its way into our designs before we even start, digging down.
I think it's one of those things. They trialled it in Queensland and Victoria at the same time. I think it was both states brought it in. I think it's a matter of time. It will come into New South Wales, and even now, certain councils are starting to condition that you have to do it. So I think it's definitely got to be thought about in the design process. And I think if you want to create a really livable home for a large group of people as well, to get the way we look at it is, if we're ever whether it's for us, for a client, and we're designing and building a duplex, we want to get the maximum amount of people possible to look at that product. So if we're designing in a way that suits everyone, then basically that's the outcome to get that. So I think it's a matter of time before New South Wales brings it in more and more. I'm not racing for it to come in. I'm not looking forward to it because it can be quite restrictive on what you can do with a site as well.
There's a zero entry level. You have to have a no step entry to your front door and things like that. It gets quite intense.
And I'm not completely across all of it, but I know when it first came in Queensland, there was some conflicts with the NCC as well. I believe, like, it was saying, you had to do a certain thing in one way, and the NCC saying you're doing a different way, and it's like, well, what sort of rules? What rules here?
Yeah. Well, the NCC came out with it, the new changes. There's a whole bunch of things happening in the industry at the moment, and people have to be across them. Do you think the council rules and the DCP and all, I guess the CDC rules, and we'll go through a little bit more into the CDC stuff in a sec, but do you think they go far enough? Do you think they're being too restrictive with the industry at the moment? Is there concessions that people should be making or anything like that you think should be done?
Yeah, I think, look, CDC it's a great pathway. It's a really good, quick, streamlined result. It can be super restrictive. So we probably find 1 in 10 sites, if it's a knockdown rebuild, can go through that CDC pathway. I think a good middle ground at the moment is we're doing quite a bit of work in Newcastle City Council, and they've got the accelerated development program. And that's basically saying, we can't do CDC as a pathway. We're quite close to it. There's only some minor variations. We'll get a fast track through council. I think certain councils are probably not as proactive to developments. There's obviously a housing issue at the moment, which is pretty well talked about. And then there's certain councils that don't do a lot to support more higher density homes. I don't know if anyone's been fortunate enough to travel around Europe a bit, but if you look over there, hardly anyone lives in a big home. Everyone lives in, town centres areas. They're all in apartments. They're all in townhouses. And they just don't have the urban sprawl that we've had. And I think that's got to be a big focus for Australia moving forward is, if we keep spreading out at the rate we're spreading, Newcastle's a prime example. A lot of areas are prime for development, but they actually just don't have sewer and water infrastructure. So if we can put that focus back into the areas for knockdown rebuilds in inner city where we are, it's going to save the government a huge amount of money, but we've just got to get the councils more on board. I think a big part of it plays in designers, developers and builders as well, because historically, when there wasn't those restrictions in place, they probably didn't do the right thing. And there is some product out there that's not very livable and also is a bit of an eyesore. So I think it's a double-ended approach there.
Yeah, like Lake Macquarie Council at the moment is struggling with that very situation. I mean, they've got no easements on slopey blocks.
Yep.
There's certain design factors like they don't allow pump out systems. Well, they do, but that's the last resort. Yep. On-site detention, there are ways to fix them, but unfortunately they are expensive ways to fix them, and usually it always falls on the client to be the ones to face that problem.
Yeah.
So I guess on the council situation, Lake Macquarie Council has been quite proactive in trying to get more developments, i.e. BlackRock, and there's a few things. Do you think people should be splitting their blocks into these 250 square meters? I know we mentioned that, having these smaller spaces. Do you think council should be a little bit more proactive in helping people make this subdivided?
I think so. Like, I think they should be very supportive of it. Like, the old dream of having an 800 square meter block with a huge house on it, you just can't afford it these days. So I think for people to live in good locations, work in the cities and not move out to regional areas, because there is a big move for people moving to regional and working remotely. If they want to keep people in the cities, the solution is to make housing more affordable. And that's, basically smaller blocks of land with good designs, close to good amenity is the key, I believe. Yeah.
Well, there's a big move at the moment through the CDC or the complying development route that they're going to provide. There's a new body coming out called the Development Construction Association.
Yep.
That's right. Okay. There's a new body coming out, the Development Construction Association, which is basically going to be kind of a one-stop shop for all of the major referrals. Like if you're in a bushfire zone, or if you need transport or something like that. We touched on it a little bit last night at the meeting. Had a chat a little bit before this. At the moment, it seems as though it's a $1,200 referral fee to any of the referrals outside of our standard council application. It's going to be expensive.
Yeah, it's definitely going to add up for clients. They've got to pay multiple referrals. I think it's one of those things where it needs to be weighed up for a client. If that process is going to get them a quicker outcome and that cost outweighs their holding cost on the site, then it's probably desirable and worth looking at. If that cost doesn't outweigh their holding cost, then they're probably better off looking at more traditional pathways that might take a bit longer to get approvals through. I think and I'm not completely across it. I've heard a few people talk about it, but I haven't really deep dived into research myself. I know there's talk about relaxations through the CDC. And Queensland has a similar system when I've worked up there, which I have seen work really well. When I was working up there years ago, I think it was $500. So it was much cheaper, but was really good for instances where you say you've got two houses, one's 6 meters and one's 10 meters setback, and under CDC you've got to meet the two averages, whereas you could apply for a relaxation for a standard setback, which council would grant pretty easily. But I think it just look, we just need, I guess, see how these things get rolled out, because that's what it all comes down to.
Well, CDC's it's one of the, particularly for us, that's our first way that we design. We design all of our stuff to first go through complying development. If it can't go through complying development, then we reluctantly go through a DA, unless it's completely never going to make it anyway. One of the coolest things that, and you touched on it for a second, that they are going to relax the complying development, but they're not going to relax it in a way of, you can do more. It's going to be, this is the complying development rule, but there is a variation available, which gets the DCA, or the Development Control Association, involved
to review it basically. And so we're exactly the same as you. We design everything to CDC as a first point, and then sometimes if it's not going to get the best outcome for the site, we'll go for a pathway of DA or accelerated DA, and that's where I think this could work. Like if you're basically 99% CDC approved and good to go, but there's that 1% that just doesn't quite meet the CDC requirements. Under the current rules, you can't get it approved. It's just black and white, you can't do it. And this sort of opens that door to still get that streamlined approval through certifiers for, albeit maybe a $1,200 fee or wherever that sort of lands.
So I think we had a chat. So we were listening to James McKee from Cert Lane last night have a chat about this situation, and he's mentioned that there's a 10% variance availability on the compliant development code.
Yep.
If within that 10% variance, this variation though still goes to the DCA, so there's still a variation fee that they have to pay, and the DCA will make that decision, and then but the beautiful thing about the DCA is that they have a 20 or a 28 day,
and I think it's deemed approved if they don't respond in time. So at least there's a cutoff there that
absolutely, and that's a game changer in itself. Like if they don't get you an answer within 4 weeks or so, it's approved.
Yeah.
Play on, which is magic.
I guess it does open the can of worms, though, where they could reject it in that period of time as well. But I mean, I guess that would,
That's right. Like if they're not confident, then 100% they'll just shut it away. But I think it's a great rule that's coming out, and I really think it's going to help take, I guess, the stress and the weight off the councils and move it off to this DCA crew. But I think where the danger sits is that where there is a scream for great certifiers and guys to look after this process. This process of having a variation for the compliant development could really, really work and really work well if it was given to the certifiers.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things. Council don't want to completely let go of that control at the moment, but at the same time, most councils also realise they're screaming for staff. They're understaffed and they can't keep up. And a lot of people blame council's too slow and too this and that. And when you actually break it down, like a lot of the time they are just short staffed, and they're trying to find ways to send that external, but I guess still holding a bit of that control. We find the same. Like one of my biggest bugbears with CDC is driveway approvals. We can do a CDC approval in 4 to 5 weeks. If we just line up our process and get everything together, you can have one out in 4 weeks, basically. We recently just did one in Central Coast Council, and that was exactly the case. We had all our documents ready to go in 5 weeks' time. Our driveway approval took us 14 weeks to get out from Central Coast Council. That is, that could be assessed by an engineer. It could be that there's harder things in the build process than a driveway approval. But what it comes down to, like I know a few guys at Central Coast Council quite well, and it didn't land on someone's desk for 8 weeks. So they're just short staffed. There's too much work going through. So they've just got to find ways to get that out to other parties, but also I guess keep the quality, because that's where the risk comes in. If they send it to external parties and certifiers aren't like that, they're very legislation's pretty clear for them what they have to do, but find a way to keep the quality but also get the quicker outcome.
Well, it'd be similar to Newcastle's ADA or the Accelerated Development Application, because if they could find accredited certifiers or whoever they can,
trusted consultants that do a lot of work with them, and
absolutely. Like and ideally, as long as everybody's sticking by the rules and everyone's doing their thing, a good certifier will be able to say yes or no and be truthful about it. And I think it would take a lot of pressure off the councils, particularly if it's only a small variation in the CDC. Yes, there is a little bit more expense. There is a little bit more expense, but a lot of pressure off council. A lot of times, if clients are upset at council, they're not the only clients that are upset at council. There's going to be like hundreds of other clients who are going to be similarly upset.
Whole backlog of them, and
and we try, we all know that council have a hard time getting through these, and I think the DCA idea is a great idea. I just hope it's being thought through properly.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope it gets implemented smoothly. I find with a lot of these things that come out, the first 3 to 9 months, they're really messy and hard to work through. So similar to when we had our H1 performance solution come in for soil types with our plumbing, the first handful that we lodged of those was an absolute nightmare to work through. The intentions were good from fair trading and it was something that needed to be done, whereas now they're streamlined and smooth. So I just hope that they put the forward in, that the process is right, and it goes through. But just on that accelerated development, they're the best things that have come to Newcastle Council. Like, so good. That you can work with an approved and accredited town planner to basically review your DA and lodge it to council, and then the council's just got to check their work. And we had one come out in 4 days there a few few months ago, which is just absolutely unheard of. Like an incredible time frame.
It's beautiful, and there's nothing crazy about it in terms of designs or anything like that, because it's considered a council application. It is all for all purposes. It is a council application. It's just so close to CDC. Just not within the CDC.
Not quite there. And Newcastle did really well, because hats off to them, because the criteria to lodge it is also really clear. You can read their guidelines of what does meet and what doesn't meet, and you can straight away be like, well, okay, this is going to go for accelerated development, or this is not. So we push that pathway with the majority of our clients, because we know we're not quite going to get CDC, but we can sit down with them at the start and sort of say, hey, here's your risk profile. If you want to go CDC, this is the result you're going to get, and it's going to restrict your site. If you want to go ADA and be streamlined and quick, this is a result you'll get, and you're going to get a little bit more. Or if you want to go the full pathway that we can't really guarantee a time frame for the DA approval, but you want this higher yield, you tell me where your risk profile is, and we can work it through, and that goes into the feasibility, and off you go.
Which circles all the way back to that appropriate team at the start, the due diligence checks, the risk profiles, the making sure that you're buying the right place, getting blokes like yourself to run through these risk profiles with them, and then help them purchase these blocks, and then hopefully achieve an awesome yield from it, because that's what everybody's in for, right?
Yeah, I think that's a big one as well. It's just getting your right team on board. Like, we've got clients that we've been speaking to for 12 months, and then they've just gone and picked up the right site for them, but it took 12 months for them to find it. We probably looked at 12 or 15 sites for them that they just flicked to us from time to time, and we'd be like, hey, don't do it. Just, it looks good from this, but then there's this issue here with stormwater, and just stay away from it. We probably saved them an absolute fortune, because there was a few sites that, value-wise, looked like they really stacked up. But when you get into the planning and the constructability side, could have been one of the biggest mistakes of their life. But the only way you learn that is also through experience. Absolutely. So I think anyone that's a experienced developer or builder or planner or designer, they've learnt the most from their, I guess, biggest mistakes. And then when you look at a site, you can see that, and you're like, run for the hills, because I've been down this road and I know how this scenario ends.
Yeah, and the importance of experience with failures is huge. I mean, my mistakes or things that I've learned from, things that have gone belly up for me, I'll share with you. And then, ultimately, again, with that team in place, everybody should have enough experience to understand where there's going to be a drama, whether it's going to be rock, water, fire, flood, whatever the block might give it. It's always important to, there will always be a problem. It's Murphy's Law, right? You're just going to make sure that you capture it, or at least try and be prepared for it, to make sure that your build goes the right way.
Yeah, and we do that all the time. Like, I talk to a heap of builders in Newcastle, really friendly with the majority of them. Most of them are top guys. And if I'm looking at the site and I know they're building in the street or a few streets away, I'll give them a call and be like, hey, look, I'm looking at this site. What was it like? And they might give me a call back and be like, oh, we had to do 12 meter deep screw piers. I'm like, all right, well, that's a scenario that we need to look out for. Yeah. But how do you know that otherwise? Like, it's the community in Newcastle is good for that. That's one thing I've found. I've worked in a few other cities. I've worked in Brisbane, and I've worked a lot in Melbourne, and I found it didn't have that. Very competitive. Builders didn't want to share information with other builders, because they just sort of wanted to one up themselves. When I relocated back up here to Newcastle, I found it really welcoming. And people like yourself, like, you're obviously a designer yourself, but more than open to share knowledge and work for everything together. And it's one of the beauties about the place.
I completely agree. Newcastle is one of those really good places where everyone can be mates, and as long as you're all working together and not stitching everybody up, then you're going to go really well. There's going to be a million people here that you can have a conversation with and make sure that you get a good result at the end of it. So I totally agree.
And the other thing is, I think there's plenty of work for everyone. So you don't have to be sort of standoffish and keep all your secrets. There's plenty of work to go around. So it's,
And that's the beautiful thing about Newcastle as well. I guess as a tight-knit space, it doesn't have to be that race to the bottom. People don't have to fight each other to try and undercut each other. There is plenty of opportunity for everybody, and I guess that's a part of the conversation of being that having that transparency, having that team around to say, hey, well, hang on, let's go over it, let's talk about why this is different, let's talk about why this might be a little bit more expensive, and if everyone's doing the right thing, there's nothing to be worried about.
Like if I look at a development site, there's probably 4 or 5 people I'll email and call off the bat. I'm like, hey, what's your thoughts? What's your second opinion? Like, I'm very well across it, and I've got all my own opinions and ideas of how I'm going to solve certain situations. But there's a few architects, a few engineers that I'll flick to for stormwater and be like, hey, this is the way I think it's going to work. I've done this in a different council before. This should work. And they'll come back and be like, yeah, council's going to be on board with that. Here's a scenario where we did it. And it's just, even they're other architects that are in the same sort of space as us. Sometimes we work with them, sometimes we don't, but they're more than happy to just help and share. And I think that's, for anyone looking to get into that sort of space of building, and particularly dual locks, like just do it. Just pick up the phone and call someone. Like everyone's always pretty happy to give a hand.
Would you prefer your clients call you with a block, or would you want to search for a block with them?
Oh, look, I'd prefer them to call me before they buy it. I like clients will call us and give us a bit of brief of what they're looking to do, because often we can have a chat to them and, off the bat say, well, that's going to be possible or not possible. And then as some sites come through, we can give them some feedback. There's nothing worse for me than a client buys a site that they're so excited about and so happy, and then they've completely overlooked that it's mining guidelines 1. And you're like, hey, there's going to be this huge issue with your site and all these challenges to go through, which could have been completely missed. Just give us a call before you purchase the site, basically. So I think for us, we don't pick up any jobs rarely that are DA approved, ready to build. All our jobs come from the cycle from the start. There's a few architects we work with that they'll be going through the design work, and whether we're going to build it or not, they'll flick it to us to get some construction feedback. And a few of those ones we will take on and build. But for the most part, we try and pick them up, engage them at the very start, so we can take them through the whole cycle and just make sure that we are ticking off all those items that the site that they've got is going to work for what they want to do.
So you get involved with the design and the construction, which is fantastic for the client, particularly when they're spending $1.5 million to make sure that they're getting a product that you're going to put together, and you're going to be knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, so we got 2 pathways that we do. So from a design aspect, we'll design in-house. I used to be a drafter myself,
nice.
Back a few years ago, but we've got in-house design capabilities, and we do partner with a couple of architects depending on the product, because we also know if the clients really want to push the boundaries and an architect does a lot of work in that council, in that area, council will accept their plans a little bit better. And we're open enough to understand that. So we'll work with them. Then we go through and we do the construction for them, but then we actually do the subdivision works for them as well. So, with our clients, we don't just sort of come back to them at OC stage and say, hey, here's your dual lock, you work it out from here. We'll then follow through and get the subdivision, and then they can tenant them before the subdivision's completed. But we always tell them, you got to wait for subdivision before you sell, and there's a bit of a process to go through that. But you find, a lot of clients, they haven't developed before. They don't know that process, and it's quite involved to do it. And we can streamline it a lot as well. We can get our surveys in after lockup. As soon as our concrete goes down for driveways, map all that out. And by the time we've got OC, subdivision can be lodged and just about ready to come out. Whereas if you give that back to a client at OC, they've got to go find a surveyor. They've got to get it done on site. They've got to get council to do the plan sealing. It's got to go to land titles. Like, they can take months and months and months. Peak debt holding this property.
And while people don't know what they're doing or what to expect. And then they're not aware of the cost. The cost is incredible when you're trying to subdivide a block and doing just even the granny flats and not having to subdivide the contribution fees that come along with that. It's just it can take the happiness out of doing these kind of developments, and I think we've swung in the wrong direction. I think to make that a little bit harder for everybody.
Yeah, and that's the way we break down our builds when we price them. So we'll give the clients a detailed tender. We'll list what's included and what's excluded. But for all the items excluded, for example, if we're not paying for the contributions to council, we'll still give them the figure of what it's going to cost them. So then, they don't go through it and they're like, oh, I'm up to $60,000 of contributions now. I had a budget of 1.5. It's now 1.56 because I wasn't aware of the 60 grand that was, had to come up and be paid to the governments essentially. Yeah.
What's the biggest things that you kind of warn your clients before they come and talk to you about it?
Look, the biggest one is in Newcastle, always mine subsidence. Always just be aware of what you're working with there.
Yeah.
And then the other ones is we straight away talk to them about contributions. Like, are you aware that you've got to pay contributions? And there's several of them through the sequence, and they can change by council because they're the ones I find people are just not aware of. And then the final one is the subdivision process. A lot of clients, and look, they haven't done it before, so they just don't know. They think they get their OC certificate and they can sell the properties, and there's still a process to go through before you can settle those.
So you're in the design and construct space, so you'd be in the perfect position to say, duplex or not, what kind of process or how long should someone expect for the moment they call you up and say, hey, coming out and have a look at my block, I want to build something, to actually walking in their front door?
Yeah, look, I'd say 18 months is quite a solid, good time frame. Depending what pathway we end up, like obviously CDC, as we've discussed, is a much quicker approval pathway. But if you're allowed 6 months for your DA, we should be able to turn around in 6 months and get your DA and then straight into CC approval. For a construction time frame, we tell people worst case scenario is we're 12 months. If we get a good run at things, we can build them in 6 to 7. Typically, we'll realistically end at about 9 because you just never get a perfect run. You'll get held up at your slab with some rain or those sort of scenarios that you just lose a little bit of time. And then after completion, I normally tell clients 60 days to complete your subdivision. There's ways that we can streamline that. So obviously, as soon as we're at lockup, we'll bring the surveyor in. Depends on the council as well and how they condition the DA. So a few projects we've had subdivision approved before we've had OC, which was really good outcome. And it was just the way that council conditioned it that we could do it that way. And then the other one that I'm a big advocate for is the pre-examinations on land titles. So a lot of people aren't aware of that. You pay for your fees twice for the examination, essentially. But again, it's one of those cost versus time scenarios. So if you're paying $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a week in holding costs versus $750 for an extra examination of land titles, essentially what it means is you can get it pre-examined while you're going through council and you're getting your bank to sign off the survey certificate, and then when it's lodged in land title, it only takes 2 to 3 days instead of 2 to 3 weeks. So few scenarios like that we'll always discuss with clients. We've got one client at the moment, he has sold both his units, and we said we weren't going to do the pre-examination because we had a longer settlement period and it was all fine. That's taken a bit longer than expected in council. Now we sort of said, hey, maybe we look at the $750 to make sure you get a quick settlement come through.
Yeah. Is there anything that you wish your clients would come up to you with pre-seeing you? Or if they come out and go, hey, Karl, mate, I've got XYZ. What's that XYZ that you'd rather them have?
I think the biggest one, if clients come to us with a clear outcome of what they want to get from the project, that's what can really streamline it. So then when we start that design process, we know who we're designing for. If we're designing it and they're looking to rent the product, can be quite different if we're designing it and they're looking to sell the product. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to design a product that they're looking to rent and at the last minute they decide to sell it, because in those products we'll change certain materials. So we'll change floor coverings, we'll do the kitchen in a certain way, because if they're going to hold that for 5 to 10 years and that's their plan, you don't want to put something in that's going to be easily damaged. Whereas if we're going to sell it to an owner occupier who's naturally going to take a lot more care for the product, we'll upspec certain items that are going to have more of an emotional sell and get a better price out of it. So that's really important, is just having a clear objective of what you want out of the project.
That's going to make the big difference between whether or not it is an investment or whether or not you're actually going to live there.
Yeah.
And yeah, you would 100% have a little bit more attachment to something that you want to keep for X amount of years than someone that you're going to flog. So yeah, definitely a value change there. What are the things that you want clients to watch out for? Let's say they come to you and go, Karl, mate, I want a price. You give them your quote and then they go, okay, naturally I'm going to go and find 3 other quotes. What do you want them to be aware of?
Oh, look, I think different builders can price in very different ways. when we price a build, we price it full turnkey. So, that's driveways, landscaping, blinds, the whole lot. Like basically you're ready to move into the property. The other thing we need to be really clear on, and that's why we set it out in our tenders, if we're paying for contributions or not paying contributions, some other builders will pay for the contributions, and that can make their price way higher or way lower. And as well, just things like minor works, engineering for minor works, subdivision fees, just ask those questions. So we try and cover that by basically detailing in our price that we are including all of those items. Ask us questions, go through it, but there'll be no surprises. You can get certain prices from certain people and then come with a lot of surprises down the line, which is obviously really challenging for a client to overcome. If they build their house and the fine print says they only get 20 downlights and it's a duplex that probably needs more like 60 or 70, and then they get a big variation that changes the cost, can be really hard on their budget.
And it's a rude shock. It's a variation, and variations usually cost more. When you give your quotes, do you itemize absolutely everything? Do you label them? Do you tell them what they do in terms of what does your general quote look like?
Yeah, well, we give detailed plans is a big one. So we will give electrical plans for an example. We'll give electrical plans so they can see exactly what they're getting. We detailed the whole specifications, but we also detailed the whole interior design as well. So they know exactly in their kitchen what tap they're getting. They know what basin they're getting. They know for the landscaping, what fence style we're doing, what clotheslines we're doing. And basically they can follow through and just make sure that it is everything that they wanted. That's both ways as well, though. So that is for the client to understand that what they're getting out of their build price and that we are covering all those items. That's also for us that when we go into a build and that we've signed off everything, very rarely do we do variations on site. We don't want the client coming through midway through the build and, still picking kitchen colors and stone, and that's delaying our build program. So we make sure we do all that up front in the contract stage, and then we can just move through seamlessly through the build.
What's the danger? Like, what's the danger there if the builder doesn't give something so direct?
Oh, I mean, I guess you don't know what you're getting, right? Like it opens risk for both sides. Like a lot of builders might take that approach because it means more flexibility for them to put certain products in that maybe weren't specified and maybe save some dollars. But it can also backfire and go the other way, because if it's not clearly specified, the client's expectation can also argue that they were getting something else. And it just, opens delays, it, breaks trust. There's no transparency. So I think it's one thing we always encourage our clients, if you've got a question, just ask it. Like if we're going through, whether it's our contract, special conditions, colors, like give us a call, sit down, we'll spend the time, we'll go through it with you, because we want you to understand before we go into this build, so it's nice and smooth on both ends.
So the clarity of your quote is obviously one thing that you got to make sure of. Is there anything inside the contract or anything like that that clients should be aware of, or anything that they should be paying attention to before signing anything?
Yeah, I think like from a client's perspective, they obviously want to read the contract and go through it. You've got items like liquidated damages, like make sure they're fair and they're reasonable for both parties. Also your progress claim schedule, make sure that that's not too heavily front loaded. You don't want to pay your builder all the money up front and then worst case happens, they don't finish and you're a long way out of pocket and they've got very minimal claims to come through. And the other one is just actually read the contract. The HIA contract is made by builders for builders at the end of the day. So, we put quite a few special conditions in our contracts to adjust the standard HIA. They're not all necessarily in our favour. A lot of them are actually just further clarification on the contract that it doesn't define a certain term. So even items around wet delays and things like that, just putting a bit more definition to them, when we can claim a wet day, when we can't claim a wet day.
And a wet day is rain day, right?
Yeah. Well, that's right. But then it's even items like, around increment weather days is if it's too windy and a roofer can't get on site because it's unsafe. Like if we've got 40 kilometers an hour wind, like that is a delay. And another one that comes up often is with temperature. Like if we're hitting above 36 degrees, depending on what task we're doing,
gets hot up there.
That can be a delay as well. And I've had clients sort of ask us on that before, but then if you talk to someone, it's like, hey, well, do you want us to pour your slab on a 40-degree day? The answer is probably not. So it's just going through those items and making sure everyone's on the same page.
What's a good expectation for some of those clauses that was in there?
Look, every bank's got their own policy for progress claims. So I think red flags for me would be if there's a very minimal cost on PC and a huge cost on deposit and slab and frame, and they're really outweighing each other. I guess the good thing is banks will push back on that, and banks will say from a risk profile we need a certain amount of money at the end of the build. But I think it's just balancing it. Like it's a bit of a proof check. Like is the progress claim schedule actually meeting the cost spent on site, because that's the way the builder should be setting it out.
So I've seen some quotes go, you know, they'll do the percentage for the slab and then it frame up and then it close in and then you've got, you know, fix out and all that kind of stuff, which was a really neat way to do a quote. And then particularly when you have a breakdown quote with all of your items that you're going to use, the client knows what they're going to get at each of those stages and each of those percentage payments, and it makes it would make everybody who's doing those kind of jobs feel confident and you know, understanding that they're going to get the right product. So, mate, honestly, I really appreciate your time. I'll keep you here all night. Honestly, I'll ask a million questions, but mate, I'll have to get you back on. And thanks for joining me again tonight. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks very much. Thanks for having us. I really appreciate your time. It was good to catch up. Have you on?
Mate, for sure. Thanks. Well, there you go, guys. Thanks for joining us again tonight. If you have any questions for Karl, particularly for the dual locks and all the stuff that you're really great at, feel free to give him a follow, a like, even out on Hellyar Design and Construct. And while you're at it, give us a follow and a share as well. Have a good one. Thanks for listening to this week's app of The Lounge. To make sure you don't miss out on the next episode, hit subscribe. We'd love to get the message out to more homeowners like you. Make sure you leave a rating and a review, and we'll see you on the next app.